I am doing paper 1 of the semi-external examination that was written in 2018. Now I have written here grade 8 as well as grade 9. So the content grade 8 and 9 is the face. So the paper 9 is just as well applicable to the grade 8 learners as well. So one of the important things before I start going through the question paper, I just want to explain or just highlight the instructions and the information that is really needed. So the first thing is you are supposed to show all your workings very clearly, please, and then you answer all questions, and then the degree of accuracy still remains the same. When an answer is not an exact answer, you give your answer to 1 decimal place. When it involves money calculations, you give to 2 decimal places. The most important one is you may not use a calculator for this paper. So if you don't have access to this question paper, remember in my other video I said that you can access in my Google Classroom. I have loaded and typed the question paper out so you can actually print it out on your own, and then you can work it out, and where you get stuck, then you can have a look at the video, say, or you try to solve it and then afterwards have a look at the video to make sure where you went wrong, and look at the explanations that I am putting out there. Right, so the very first question here is very straightforward. Now what you must be careful is you are dealing with bottomers here. Multiplication must be done before addition. So the 5 times 2 must first be done, and that is why that answer is 13. Question 2, you're supposed to arrange the following in ascending order. That means from smallest to biggest. So you have to look at the place values. All right. So the place values, so obviously 0 tens here, 0 tens here, but this one has got 400s and 500s and so on. So the place value plays a role. Okay. So you just get 1 mark here. So your ordering has to be 100% correct. Then you have a question here, question 3, you're supposed to round to 2 decimal places. Now, here's something I need to explain when we get to 2 decimal places. Your answer should have 2 decimal places when you are done with it. Whether it's a 0, there must be 2 decimal places, as you can see the case here. So when you round to 2 decimal places, you look at the 3rd digit in the 3rd decimal place. It's a 9, so it's rounding this up, and that in turn rounds that tens to 5 tens. So you must be a bit careful here that you do not write 9.5. 9.5 will be a wrong answer, because your answer should be given to 2 decimal places, and there must be 2 decimal places in your solution. Right, the ratio of sheep to goats is in 2:3, so I brought it in here and I put everything underneath. They say there are 15 goats. All right, so if you have one complete side, you can find out, okay, you multiply 3 times 5 to give you the 15. So you also do the same on the other side. Eventually, whatever method you are using, you should realize that you get 10. Some people are using cross multiplication. It's still okay. It's direct proportion, so you can find the answer as one increases, so does the other. Well, this question here also is very tricky. So what people need to be on the lookout for is what we refer to as significant figure. So when we are talking about significant figures here, we look at this particular number here, say. So this number is, remember, it's 200 plus 10, that's what this number is, and plus 5. So when you are told to give the number to the nearest or to one significant figure, the first digit in that number, in this particular case, the 2, all right, because it's the first non-zero digit, that first digit is the first significant figure. So in order for you to round to the nearest significant figures, you have to look at your tens. Now if it's 50 or more, it obviously affects that to a 300, so it can't affect that to a 300. So when you round that number, it will simply just be 200. So the second one is the 19 here. So you look at the first significant figure is the 1. So this 9 units is going to change this to a 20. So that is how you do this one. You have to think about significant figures, and then you need to know exactly what is most significant in a number. And that will allow you to find the answers, right? So let me just take this away here so that you can see how I did that. It's a very straightforward question. So the answer is just 200 divided by 20. That is what we wanted to see there. So for part B, you're just supposed to now solve this answer here. So it's 200 divided by 20, which is 10. Right, question 6, a little bit of indices here. So the a raised to the power of n, the n is the exponent or the index. So the a is the base, okay? So you just have to write a for the base, and that is all that question requires. This question here, and I've underlined the word all, so that if you miss one of the factors of 21, you are not going to get full marks here. It's just 1 mark question. So you must list them all. 1 times 21 gives you 21, and 3 times 7 gives you 21. So these are 4 factors for 21, and you must list them all. Question 8 deals with adding and subtracting directed numbers. So you have got at noon, 12 o'clock during the day, the temperature was 10 degrees Celsius and it fell by 12 degrees. So that means they're supposed to subtract, and the temperature at night or at midnight would be minus 2 degrees Celsius. Then we have a question here. The number 225 can be written as 5 squared times 3 squared. That is when you write it as a product with its prime factors. If you have a look at paper 2, you will see there's one that I did there that I also show. But of course, now the question asks you to find the square root. So what times what gives you 225? So we'll also expect you to be able to recall square numbers. All right. Now, what you also realize, and we don't write it here, is that there is a little 2 here when we are talking about square root, but we do not write it really. So what I'd say is, what number multiplied by itself will give you 225? And obviously now I'm dividing my indices by that 2. If it was cube root, I would divide it by 3. Suppose this 225 was a cube number. So when you do that, you get 5 times 3, which gives you 15. That's one way that you can do it. Or you can find what 2 identical numbers multiplied give you 225. And that number is 15. Question 10a here talks about somebody who bought a calculator, so this is the cost price, and later on he sold the calculator, okay? So sold the calculator for 180 Namibian dollars rather. So you are supposed to calculate his profit. This is a very straightforward question. So you just subtract 180 minus 150 and his profit is 30 Namibian dollars. The B part says you must express his profit as a percentage of the cost price. So one of the biggest mistakes that learners are doing is that they put the profit over the selling price, and that is wrong. It should be the profit always over the original price of the item. And we know that it was 30 over 150. Now if you take your, remember you are not using a calculator, but if you take your pen or your pencil and you do cross out the zeros, when you cross out the zeros, what you are actually doing is you are dividing by 10. And then you can simply go ahead as well, because there's still a number that can go into 3 that can also go into 15. And 3, that number is 3, so that 3 goes here once if you divide by 3, and 3 will go here, you guess it right, 5 times. So it's better if you can work with a fraction that is in its simplest form, because once the fraction is in its simplest form, like what I have here, I can easily then find my answer, because I must now multiply the numerator times the numerator and the denominator times the denominator in order for me to find my answer of 20%. Remember, it's better to work with simplified fractions, and then you don't have problems with calculations. Now this question here, hectares to meters square, you need to understand that hectares is just another way of talking about an area of a very large portion of land maybe. So let me bring in a little square here, and let's suppose this is a square field that is 100 meters by 100 meters. And if I was to ask you to calculate the area of the square, you will calculate the area of the square by, and you will realize the area of the square is 10,000 square meters. And because it's 10,000 square meters, that is actually equal to 1 hectare. So one of the things that I like to say to my students is that whenever they want to remember this, just think of a 100-meter runner, 100 meters by 100 meters. Somehow you can remember that a square that is 100 by 100, and whatever that area of that square is, then you can definitely work with the conversion. So that means now the answer for part 11, you are supposed to then multiply that 3.5 with 10,000 in order for you to find the answer, which is 35,000 square meters. Right, so this particular question here, we have got a line that intersect with another line. Okay, so you have got a vertical line, PQ, this line is vertical, and you have got a horizontal line, WZ or WZ. Now, so what they are asking us here, they are saying you're supposed to write down the coordinates of the point of intersection as this little point here. All right, so for 2 marks, you must make sure that you give the right coordinate. You first start with the X, and then you start with the Y. So the coordinate therefore is -3, 2. Don't swap them around. You swap them around, you talk about a total different point on the Cartesian coordinate system. Part 13, so we bring in a graph here that shows how the temperature of tea after it's been poured in a cup, how it changes. So obviously from very hot until it gets to about room temperature. Okay, so as you can see in the second minute, for example, it was somewhere there in the 50 something degrees. In the 5th minute, somewhere there in like close to 30 degrees, and so on. So you can see that it goes down, it gets colder, all right, until it reaches room temperature. So the question here, very straightforward. What was the temperature of the tea after 5 minutes? So you go to your time, 5 minutes here, and then you read the temperature there, which is obviously just at 30 degrees Celsius. How long, so this is the time, would it take for the tea to cool down to 45 degrees? So we have to go somewhere to 45 degrees. Now, one of the things that you need to do here, and this was a problem, is you need to find your scale here. Now, what I mean by that is you have got 10 divided by 5 little blocks if you count them. All right, so when you divide 10 by 5 blocks, you get 2. So each little square represents 2 degrees Celsius. So if I'm here at 40, if I go to 40, that means then if I'm here at 40 and I'm here at 50, so I expect 45 to be halfway in the middle. So 45 in actual case, I expect it to be 42, 45 should be somewhere in that particular area there. So what I do is I then draw the line there. Can you see what I do? And then I draw downwards, the corresponding, I go down. So I go across and then I go down and then I read. Now I will know that here you have to be a little bit on the lookout. Now you have got, if I want to look at the scale here, what is the scale here? All right, so there, that scale there is then 2 units or 2 minutes divided by 10, because there are 10 little squares there. Again, you realize that one little square represents 0.2. Okay, so when I'm here, I can read this off as 2.246, 2.8, 2.9 is somewhere there. And that's how that particular question is done. So I get about 2.8 minutes there, and that is the acceptable answer. Right, question 14. You're supposed to name the angle that is shown here. Now it's this particular angle where you have this whole sort of arrow. Can you see this whole side on the outside? So that's a reflex angle because it's bigger than 270 degrees. Actually, it's bigger than 180 degrees. Can you see that? All right, but less than 360. So that's a reflex angle here. We're not talking about this particular one inside here. We're talking about the reflex angle on the outside. Here you have a ruler, and you're supposed to write down the length of PQ. You can easily do that by saying 10 minus 3. You get 7 centimeters, or you can simply just count from 3 to 10. That is going to starting at 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 centimeters. We got a polygon here. All right, so you have to know the number of sides that this polygon consists of. For example, this is 1, that's 2, that's 3, that's 4 sides, 5 here, 6, 7 here, 8. So an 8-sided polygon is called an octagon. All right, so the correct answer for you was to give the answer as an octagon. That is the mathematical name for this particular polygon. It's a regular polygon. Then you are supposed to also give the mathematical name that describes the relationship between the line ST and the line QR. Now, as you can see, these lines, they intersect, yes, but they do so perpendicularly, right? At the point where they meet is 90 degrees, and they also cut each other in half. So these are perpendicular lines, okay? They are perpendicular lines. Question 17, you have angles at a point. Now, one of the things you should remember is that angles at a point, they add up to 360 degrees. All right, so if you add angle X plus that 50 plus that 100 plus that 140, for example, they go around that point, you are going to add up of 360. So in order for me to find X, I have to add the others and subtract it from 360, and that means that X is equal to 70 degrees. Diagram AC is parallel. The line AC is parallel to PQ. Well, they ask you to find angle M. Now I've already have it there. I don't know whether you remember when you are dealing with parallel lines and we have got things that we refer to as alternate angles. All right, so we see the geometry is fun. So the fun that we have in geometry is just a mnemonic, just something that helps us to remember a few angles, like what are referred to as alternate angles. And alternate angles, so this little angle here is going to be exactly same as that one. So that 50 here is going to be exactly the same here, because can you see that you are actually having a sort of a Z there, which is the alternate angles, and alternate angles are equal. Now, when you are calculating angle M, you need to be a bit on the lookout. So what I'm doing is I'm going to take that little triangle here, and these two primes, these lines here, they indicate that we are dealing with an isosceles triangle. And the fact that we are dealing with an isosceles triangle makes it then easy for me to find the unknown angle that is required. So one of the things that you should know is that the base angles, that is why I also put the n there, the base angles of this angle and of this angle n will be equal. So we can actually then solve this particular question by saying, well, the sum of the interior angles of a triangle, whatever the triangle, always add up to 180 degrees. Solve this particular equation, n plus n as like terms, it gives you 2n plus 50. So now you can actually solve, and you realize that n should be half of 130, which is 65 degrees. 19, well, you are supposed to write an algebraic expression. The sum of just means you add. So when you are writing 4 plus y or y plus 4, because you are adding, it doesn't really matter. You get the same mark. This question involves some substitution. So you are told that x must equal to 3 and y should equal to negative 2. So you see in red I indicated you take out those x's or those variables and you replace them or substitute them with the values that you are given. And you must be particularly careful here, because here you have negative 2 times negative 2. It's going to do something, right? It's going to change. So 5 times 3 is 15, but negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. And this is why I indicated in red So negative times a negative gives you a positive, and that is one of the biggest mistakes that people did, is they just simply went and put a minus here. Right, this is an inequality. Remember, you're supposed to represent all the values of x that are greater than negative 2. Now you know that a number to the right of another number is bigger than a number to its left, like 2 is bigger than 0. 2 will be bigger than negative 4. So numbers greater than, the arrow points in this direction. And what is also important here is that, can you see that the end of the arrow here is open, and it's going to be open because there's or equal to. Now suppose it was x is greater than or equal to, let's say, negative 2, then your negative 2 is here, for example. Okay, then you would have shaded the tail end of our arrow. It means our solution negative 2 would be included. All right, that is what we would have done there because of the or equal to. But this is not the case in this particular case. This particular case is just x is greater than negative 2. So because x is greater than negative 2, we are leaving this little tail end open like that, a little circle at the end, meaning that negative 2 is not part of the solution, but anything on the other side of that, negative 1, 0, and up to infinity, is true. Question 22, you're supposed to simplify. Now this is so straightforward. So what I did is I first rewrote, or brought my like terms together, basically like 7x minus 4x. It's easy for me to see it's 3x, and then I have 3y minus 1y, which is 2y. And this particular question here, you are supposed to take out everything outside that bracket, that 4a, you multiply it with everything inside. Okay, so the 4a times 2a is 8a squared. The 4a times negative 3b is negative 12ab. Question 24. Now, we are given here a circle with a diameter of 14 centimeters. We are supposed to calculate the circumference, which is this distance around here. This is the distance that we are looking for. Okay, so that is just going to be distance. And the formula to calculate the circumference of a circle is the diameter times pi. And you are told that for pi, you are supposed to use 22/7. So this is now where it becomes a little bit tricky. Remember, you're not using a calculator. So whenever you multiply by a fraction, you can actually take out common factors like what I did there. I said 7 goes in itself once and 7 goes there 2 times. And now it's easy. I multiply the numerator with the numerator, giving me 44, and 1 times 1 is 1, and my final answer will be 44 centimeters. Of course, if you are using another formula, then you are required to find the radius. So the radius is half of this diameter. So when you use the other formula, which is 2 pi r, then you will say 2/1 times pi. Remember, pi is 22/7 times 7/1, which is the radius. You will still ultimately get to the same answer. It is not easy just to go and say 14 times 22 and divide by 7. That's going to be too much for you, and try to simplify or take out common factors. When you use this formula, you must find the radius. When you use this formula and the diameter is given, then you just punch in the diameter as it's there. Question 25, so they are giving us here a rectangle, and they are saying that the area of the rectangle is 40 centimeters squared. The length is 8 centimeters, so you're just supposed to find the breadth. So the formula is the length times the breadth gives you the area. So 8 times what gives you 40, and very easy, you divide that 40 by 8 in order for you to find the breadth, and the breadth is going to be 5 centimeters. Part 26, you are given a pie chart, and it shows the favorite sports codes for 36 learners. So we are supposed to find the number of learners whose favorite sport is basketball. Now, if you look at the angle of basketball here, it's 90 degrees of 360. Okay, so 90 degrees over 360, the whole thing is going to add up to 360 times the 36 learners. Now, before you do anything, this 90 over 360 can be simplified. Okay, you can simplify that, and when you simplify, remember, you don't have to know what is the highest common factor. You can start by canceling out the zeros. So I have, for example, 9 over 36 now. Okay, so now I want to know what goes into 9 that also goes into 36. Well, if I know my 9 times table, I know that 9 can go in 36, and 9 goes in itself. It goes there once, and it goes here. It goes here 4 times. Okay, so it goes there 4 times. So let me just correct that one a little bit. So we know that 9 goes in 36 4 times. So this 1/4, this particular fraction here, this 1/4 is what I have here. Okay, and that is how you multiply, and from here it's very straightforward for you to find the number of learners. Simply 4 goes in 36, giving you the 9 learners whose favorite sports code is basketball. The last question in this particular exercise or this particular question paper says 2 strawberries, 4 oranges, and 1 apple are placed in a box. So if you add up all these fruit, it's going to be 7 altogether. Now we will have to find what is going to be. Suppose you take something out in the box randomly. What are your chances, or what is the probability that you're going to take out an orange? Now we know there are 4 oranges, so it's very easy. The probability that you take out an orange is going to be the number of oranges over the total number. So it's 4/7, and you are leaving your answer as a fraction. Okay, no need to go and leave it as a decimal and stuff like that. As a fraction, it is 100% the correct answer. Right, again, this brings me to the end of this particular video. I have talked about my codes that you can reach my Google Classrooms on the Google Classroom app, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and to share. All the best for the upcoming examinations. Goodbye.